Cachai Australia acknowledges that this podcast is recorded in the land of the Guringai people.
We pay our respect to all Aboriginal nations and to elders past and present.
Hola and welcome to another episode of Cachai Australia podcast. Flo Calderón, how estás tú?
Very good, and you?
Very bien, gracias.
My Spanglish is not better, but today we are having an English episode. But first, we want to say to everyone that go to our social medias, follow us in each one, give us all the stars in Spotify, subscribe to our YouTube channel and everything, because that helps us a lot.
Yes, recommend the podcast to a friend and follow us and everything. English or potentially Spanglish, if I might.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We're gonna test her English, her Spanish skills. Yeah, I think when we start this season, we had a conversation about the why we are doing this season, and for us was to get inspired and to inspire others with great stories.
Yeah.
And we said, like, doesn't matter if they are Latins, if they are from Europe, from Australia, we want to meet great people.
Yeah.
And today we are with a world record.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Record breaker.
Yeah. Imagine how cool is that. So we are here with Lisa Blair. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we have been trying to organize this episode for so long. We are really happy because Lisa is a solo sailor from Australia with great stories, experience. She also have a book, and she wants to teach us a bit about this amazing world. And I don't know, we're gonna have fun today.
Welcome, Lisa. Let's go to this episode.
Vamos. Okay, so Lisa, you are from Brisbane, here in Australia. And I want to start with the first question about how did you start having this relationship with the sailing and with the ocean in general?
Yeah, so I sort of fell into it. It was a little bit of an unexpected in my life. So I graduated at university with the idea of becoming a high school art teacher.
Okay.
And I majored in ceramics, and I had zero desire to be on a boat sailing. But then I randomly did my final university year. I got a job as the cook and the cleaner on a charter boat in the Whitsundays.
Okay.
And obviously the Whitsundays in Australia is just like a magical, like amazing place. And it was just an incredible experience. And I was cooking for 35 passengers and scrubbing the bilges and, just working on the boats. And I just fell in love with that lifestyle at sea of like eat, sleep, sail, rinse, repeat. And it's just such I just felt so free, and I just wanted more adventure.
Wow. And how do you make the change into the solo sailing?
Yeah, that was a few years later. So I worked on the charter boats in the Whitsundays for a couple of years, and then I had an opportunity to race a yacht around the world. And it was a crewed yacht race, but you had to pay a berth fee to sign up and race. So it's like an amateur yacht race. So the berth fee at the time was 80,000 Australian dollars. And I was earning $20 an hour selling jewelry at the mall, like not ever going to get that kind of money together. But I remember kind of trying to make a decision on whether this was something I was really passionate about enough to want to go. And Jessica Watson, who's another really incredible Australian sailor, and she is the youngest person to sail around the world solo. And she circumnavigated when she was 16 years old.
Wow.
And so she was just finishing her trip around the world solo when I was trying to decide if I could sail around the world with a crew of 16 people as an adult. And so I was like, well, if she can do it, I can do it. And so I sort of committed to this race and raced around the planet. And after that, I had achieved something that I never in my wildest dreams thought was possible. A whole year at sea, 40,000 nautical miles. That's like 65,000 kilometers around the planet. And what you see out there, like the wildlife encounters, the just sheer exhaustion, the stress on the body, but the adventure that you get out of it. And so I came back from that and I was like, well, I don't know how to make this more challenging except to do it solo. And how can you step it up from racing around the planet?
Yeah.
Why don't you do it on your own? So it sort of started down that pathway of going solo from there.
And then that's how you broke a couple of records, right? World records, right?
Yeah. So then I decided I would do a yacht race to New Zealand and test the waters for solo sailing. It was a 12-day yacht race. And I was trying to convince this guy in New Zealand who had this boat up for sale that instead of selling his boat, he should rent it to me so that I can race it from Australia to New Zealand and back again solo when I've never sailed solo before. So this guy's like, nah, you're nuts. You've got no experience with this. There's no way I'm lending you my boat. But he suggested that there was this project I could look at, which was the Antarctica records. And this guy's record I could look at challenging, which was established in 2008 by this Russian sailor. And his name's Fedor Konyakov. And he spent 102 days sailing solo around Antarctica. And so when I first heard about it, I just thought it was a suicide mission.
Yeah.
It's the southern, like I'd already sailed a few sections of the Southern Ocean, not very deep, like maybe 43 degrees south, which is fairly far south. It's like below like New Zealand, below Tasmania. But I'd done that with 16 people.
Yeah.
And it was tough. Like it was the hardest part of the whole trip. And so the Southern Ocean is like this really unique ecosystem because there's no land to break up the storms. And so these storms go the whole way around the planet and they just get bigger and bigger and bigger as they go around. So you end up sailing through storms the size of a cyclone or a hurricane every week.
Wow.
Like, so the waves, a normal wave in the Southern Ocean is like a 2 or 3 story building on a normal day. And then you get the storms come through.
Oh my God.
And so for me, looking at this project and going to do that on my own, like and I'd only been sailing for little over 3 years. It just seemed like it was so outside of anything that was humanly possible for me. And so I decided I wouldn't do it, that I wasn't going to be capable. Like, who am I? I'm just a little girl from the bush on the Sunshine Coast. Like,
fair enough.
Exactly, right? And then about 3 months later, I just couldn't stop thinking about it and thinking about it. And so I decided in 2014 to try and challenge his world record, and that I would go out and become the fastest person in the world to sail solo, nonstop and unassisted around Antarctica.
Wow.
And it took me 8 years to set that world record and 2 attempts. So I nearly died on the first attempt, and on the second attempt, which I finished last year, I officially broke the record.
Congratulations. So. 8 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite the adventure.
In the first one, you had like, as you said, like a really dangerous experience.
Yeah.
How do you face something like that? In one side, in the technical part, but in the other one, in the emotional one. How are you prepared to, like, I don't know, be so close to death or to experience something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I justified leaving for a record like that by telling myself, well, I could die in a car accident tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like anything could happen. At least I'm living.
Yeah.
I'm out there living my dreams. I'm having adventures, and I'm preparing to the utmost safety standards that I could possibly make the project. And stuff might go wrong, but I'm not expecting it.
Yeah.
And I've got contingencies in place if they go wrong. So I kind of left with that idea, and I'd had conversations with my family about the fact that if I don't come back, it's okay because I'm living my dream. But it was a very, very different reality to have, I guess, like thought about it in theory to then be faced completely with a life or death situation, and that night, like just for the listeners who don't have a bit of the backstory, I was 72 days into my world record. So I'd sailed 3/4 of the way around Antarctica. So from Western Australia, past sort of Tasmania, past New Zealand, past Argentina and Cape Horn there off the South American coastline.
Can I stop you there? Do you have to go through the Drake's Passage?
Yes. Yeah.
You're
so
kidding.
around Cape Horn. Yeah. So through Cape Horn.
That's the most, isn't it the most dangerous passage in the world?
But it wasn't where I nearly died. Well, I did almost die there too, but that was a different story.
Yeah, but that one doesn't count.
That one's not nearly big enough to talk about today.
What?
and then went across the South Atlantic, and I was just entering the South Indian Ocean for the last 4 weeks back to Australia. So I was breaking the world record. I was on the home run, and then the mast, which is the aluminium bit that goes up in the sky that the sails fly off, that snapped due to gear failure. And basically what happens with that is you're then stuck with a 22 metre long spear tangled to the boat with the rigging wire and the ropes that are attached to it. And I was in 8 metre breaking seas. So imagine a 3-story building breaking as whitewater. And so in those sort of conditions, one of those waves can be powerful enough to stab the boat with the spear and effectively hold the boat and start sinking you. And I was more than 1,000 nautical miles from land. So the closest boat to me, we later worked out, was 600 nautical miles away. So here to, so Sydney to the Sunshine Coast, or Sydney to Brisbane distance away from me was the closest vessel. And then, you're on your own out there.
But you communicate with radio, right?
Well, satellite communications, you're outside of radio range. But it would be a minimum of 3 days for help to arrive. Yeah. And the boat was never going to survive 3 days.
Wow. Yeah.
So I had to cut that rigging free to save the boat. It was that or die. And there was one particular moment which I talk quite a lot about in the book. And I think it sort of left a lasting kind of echo on my soul from, I guess, how traumatic it was. But on the bow of a lot of these racing yachts, you can see that they have a stick out the front that the big sails fly off, that the spinnakers fly off, and it's called a bowsprit. And so the bowsprit on my boat extends 2 meters out on the front of the boat. And the way the mast had fallen, I was trying to disconnect all the rigging, and I'm about 3 hours in at the moment. I'm hypothermic, going into hypothermia. It's freezing temperatures. I'd been snowing earlier, it was, really rough conditions. And I'd been completely soaked for 3 hours. It's the middle of the night because nothing bad ever goes wrong in the daylight. It's always the middle of the night. And I needed to disconnect this piece of rigging, but the only way to access it was to climb over the safety rails and onto that stick at the front of the boat, the bowsprit. But out there, you've got nothing to hold on to. And you've got 8 metre breaking seas. So you've got a wall of whitewater that's about 3 metres high hitting the boat every sort of 30 seconds to a minute. And that whitewater, 1 square metre of water breaking, whitewater, what you'd see at the surf, the foamy stuff, that applies 1 tonne of pressure when it impacts you. So imagine a 3 metre breaking wave, or 8 metre breaking wave with 3 metre whitewater is 3 tons of pressure impacting you. And so your ability to kind of hold on out there is
nearly.
You're pretty well not going to have the ability. It's an almost certainty. And I knew I had maybe a 50-50 shot of surviving by climbing out there, but I also knew the boat was going to sink that night if I didn't. So it's certain death
your only
if
option.
the boat sank, or I climbed out there and I had maybe a shot. But if I was washed off the bowsprit, I was never going to be able to climb back on the boat, because you get less than 10 minutes if you're dry when you go into the ocean in the Antarctic waters because of the temperature. And I'd been freezing in those temperatures for 3 hours already, so I'd have only a few minutes before I'd succumb to hypothermia and die. So I had to make the call to my shore manager at that time, and I had to say to him, if my personal location beacon is activated, my PLB, it's because I'm off the boat and I'm in the ocean. Don't come and rescue me. And that's the only way to tell my family what happened. That was the conversation I had to have. And I crawled out of the hatch. I tear up every time I tell this. I crawled out of the hatch and up onto the bow of the boat, and I got 2 meters from the front before I climbed out. And I just froze. When you talk about fear and the mind and how do you push past, I couldn't. I was stuck on the bow of the boat knowing if I climbed out there, I'm probably going to die. If I don't climb out there, I'm definitely going to die. But if I climb out there, I'm probably going to die. And if I don't do anything, I'm probably going to die. There was no good solutions. And my body, I couldn't force myself to move. It was the they say that there's different reactions where you have you fight back or you run or you freeze, and it was I just froze in that moment as it all hit me I was not going to survive. And I went through in my mind like every scenario, every solution, every tool that I had on board. Is there a safer way to tackle this problem? Like I was trying to come up with another choice or another option, and I just couldn't come up with anything. And after about 20 minutes, I was just getting more and more hypothermic. I was like losing the ability to hold tools. I was losing the ability to hold onto the boat. Like my brain was slowing down, and I was starting to get dizzy. And basically I just said to myself, like, you've just got to do it. Like there is no other choice. You've just got to make it happen. And I jumped up and I sat down and I did it. And ultimately I was able to survive. But like I didn't know until much, much later how much of an effect that night, that whole scenario would have on my life, like moving forward, because I'd never gone through something that traumatic before. And I was just operating in survival mode straight after that. Like I was still on a broken boat 1,000 miles from land, now with no mast, no sails, nothing to sail it with, and a hole in the side of the boat. So, you know, you're still just trying to get to land in that scenario. And so, it wasn't until like I finished the record and wrote the book actually that I sat down and really decompressed over it.
Yeah.
And that's when I started healing from it and starting to rebuild my trust, because it really changed the way I related to the ocean and it changed the way I related to my boat, because to do a project like that, your boat becomes almost like another character in the story. Like
for sure.
Throughout this whole podcast, you'll hear me talk about the boat as we did this, we did that, as me and the boat.
What's
I'm
the
still
name?
solo, but it's me and the boat. The name of the boat's Climate Action Now. Okay. So I run a big sustainability campaign with everything I do as well. So
I can see it in your shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so cool.
It sort of takes your trust back in your decision making. Like it ruins that trust. Like you plan for every scenario in a project like that, and you think you've got it all made, and it still goes wrong.
Yeah.
So like, what's going to go wrong next time? You know, it takes that confidence out of your decision. And like for me, I used to be like, storms are my favorite thing in the Southern Ocean. Like it's so hard to describe, but everyone who always asks me, where's your favorite place to sail? What's your favorite sailing experience? It's always being on the boat in the eye of a major storm, like the size of like a hurricane or something, and rip the roof off your house and destroy a town kind of storm. And the wind is so strong sometimes that you can't breathe facing into the wind. And it's tearing so much water off the surface of the ocean that you'd have to cup your mouth with your hands and like turn your head to the side to get a fresh breath of air. And then the boat is like, she weighs 10 tons and she just gets thrown. Like we get airborne on these waves as we get impacts. And so for me, like I would, as long as the boat was handling those conditions, like I would just be so comfortable because I trust that the boat could take it. And I trust, like I'd surrender to that scenario, like, because you can't change it. Like you're there, right? And so after the dismasting though, it took that comfort factor, that trust out of it. And in every creak and every groan and every impact from a wave, I'd like tense up, and I would, you know, it just like took that sense of serenity out of like that. Yeah, it really changed how I experienced the ocean.
How long it took you to feel confident again in your boat?
I mean, I set after the first record in 2000, so that was 2017 with the dismasting, where the mast snapped, and I went back in 2022 last year. But in between, I did a few Sydney to Hobarts with the boat, and I also set the world record around Australia nonstop. And those were part of that healing process. Okay. And the goal was just keep sailing.
Get your confidence back in.
And so it really took me like 5 years to feel like I could go to the Southern Ocean again, but it didn't stop me from being comfortable sailing, higher latitudes, closer to land, less dramatic storms, that sort of stuff.
In a more controlled environment.
Exactly. Yeah, closer to help.
Because for me, ocean is something that we cannot control. Like nothing. This is why I'm really afraid with the ocean. Even like just to go for a dip, because I feel like it's something that I cannot control. Like,
but it's also
That's
got
the beauty
no
of it, I
malice
reckon.
energy, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's got no ill intent. It's just there. It's part
Yeah.
of nature.
Yeah.
You know, and I think one thing that I hear a lot of sailors say is like, I conquered the Atlantic Ocean, or I conquered the sea. And I'm like, you didn't conquer anything. Like you have to move with Mother Nature in that environment. You got to trust that it will get you through. And, you know, things like maybe swimming with sharks and stuff, like that's their home. Like,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can't-
Yeah. Exactly. Then
We're
people
entering
complain
their
that
territory, not the other way around.
Exactly,
So yeah, like you've got to just sort of, I guess, surrender to the fact that they know what they're doing most of the time.
So when you get to you go past Antarctica, do you go into land there, or you stay there and then you come back?
So it's a non-stop world record, and I circumnavigated around the whole Antarctica. So you know the body of water, like the Southern Ocean between like South America and Antarctica, or Cape Town and Antarctica, and Australia and Antarctica, that section of ocean. So I had latitudes that I had to stay between of 45 degrees south and 60 south. But the pack ice off Antarctica starts at around 70 degrees south. So I didn't actually see ice on the trip. I had iceberg forecasting, but it's not like I went to Antarctica and came home. I like sailed the oceans around Antarctica the whole way and came back. But it's actually like when you think of like a world record for sailing, like a circumnavigation around the planet, for example, that's actually easier than sailing around the Southern Ocean, because the worst or the most dangerous section of their trip is when they round Cape Horn. And it's because they go into that storm belt that operates around the Southern Ocean, and they're in it for 2 or 3 weeks, and they have to go through those really massive storms. Whereas for me, I was in those massive storms for the whole 3 months of the trip. So I wasn't in the higher latitudes where it was nice and sunny and like, you know, I was in those storms every 3 to 5 days. I was in a new storm the size of a hurricane. So like what the boat has to put up with as far as like its strength and its integrity and the wear and tear on the vessel, like it does a lifetime's worth of work in 3 months.
And when you are sailing, you are doing things all the time, or you have time like to rest, to, I don't know, to enjoy the...
Well,
because I don't know, if I'm thinking, I don't know, I can see you like doing so many things all the time. Or it's...
Well, there's no one else, right? So you become the engineer, the plumber, the electrician, the navigator, the cook, like the cleaner, like you're every role, right? And so for me, normally you're operating at a really chronic level of exhaustion and sleep deprivation. So as a golden rule, a container ship can get from beyond the horizon to within a collision range in just over 20 minutes. So every 20 minutes as a solo sailor, you have to check the horizon.
Wow.
So I don't sleep for more than 20 minutes at a time.
Wow, never.
No, well, in around the Australia record, it was 58 days of no more than a 20-minute sleep. And when I went to Antarctica, I was so far from anyone in some of the areas, not all of them, but like around South America, for example, I was only 20 minutes or less. But in the areas of ocean between the main continents, there wasn't a lot of traffic. Well, there was just no one. Like we said, the closest ship was 600 miles away when I dismasted. So everyone was a lot further north. So they were out of that storm belt. The only kind of boats that were possibly down there would be like a whaling ship that was illegally whaling, or a legal fishing boat. Sea Shepherd was down there sometimes. But they weren't like commercial boats that you know, things that you'd have to look out for. So I would be able to increase my sleep up to like 40 minutes. Sometimes an hour and a half if I was lucky. And I was like maybe 10 hour and a half sleeps across the whole circumnavigation. But I'm not sleeping for 20 minutes and then I'm up for 4 hours. I'm trying to do like a 4 or a 6 hour window of 20-minute sleeps. And so in that window, I'm trying not to wake up completely between the sleeps. I'm just waking up enough to like look at the instruments, scan the horizon for traffic, icebergs, any hazards, check the sail trim, go back to sleep for another 20 minutes sleep. But because you're like always operating on that chronic level of exhaustion, if you're not doing something to navigate the boat, like I would spend an almost 2 hours a day, video editing, writing blogs, like all of that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah.
Doing my shoreside communications, radio interviews, like so all of that was quite a lot of commitment. And then you're sailing the boat, which is a big chunk of the time, and then stuff's breaking constantly. So you're effectively rebuilding the boat as you're sailing, and you take enough spare parts to be able to basically rebuild the whole boat. So I'm fixing stuff every day as well. And then when I'm not doing any of that, I'm trying to sleep. And if I do get some downtime, like I love reading books. And so I don't read like nice, intelligent books that make me smarter or anything. I like read the trashiest novels that I can possibly find.
Yeah. Your mind needs to stop at some point.
Like, exactly. It's your TV. It's your checkout from the world.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, that's great. And how someone who wants to start sailing should start in this process? What is the first step?
Get out sailing. You don't need any tickets or licenses to just start and work on someone's boat, or, sail with other people in a private recreational boat. So every yacht club, generally this is around the world, but specifically, yes, definitely across the whole of Australia. You can join any yacht club for 3 times and go sailing on other people's boats to see if you like it.
Oh, that's cool.
And then you meet them, and then you can decide if you like the culture of that yacht club, and does it feel like a welcome environment for you to learn. And then basically you just start crewing on people's boats when they go for twilight fun races, things like that. You could also get crewing positions as an employee on boats. Some of the best areas to get that would be around the Whitsundays, where there's lots of charter boats doing the backpacker tours around the islands off Early Beach. So they're always looking for hosties, so the cooks and the cleaners, the job I started as, and then you kind of work your way up to the ropes and the deckhands. There are formal courses you can do as well. And you can choose to go into the commercial sector where you're working on maybe ferries, tugboats, but you need to get some licenses for that. And there's loads of courses available from general purpose hand to coxswain's tickets
and stuff.
Captain's tickets, that sort of stuff. But, ultimately, like, get out and test it before you commit to a pathway of that. And so just get out on a couple people's sailboats and go sailing for a fun yacht race or something.
Yeah, it's quite common to, like, for backpackers just to go and sail for, like, or go on a boat for, like, a couple of months, and be as a crew. Sometimes even, like, for free as in pro bono, because they need crew and you want the experience of being out there and, see the wildlife out there.
So there's a couple of websites for that. One of the ones I used to use when I was delivering boats was a platform called findacrew.com.
Find a crew.
And there's also My Yacht in Australia, which is a crew network. There's a couple platforms online. You do have to be a little careful with just making sure you ask enough questions. And particularly if you're a female, you've got to be a little bit extra careful before you jump on a sailboat and just head off across an ocean.
Yeah, of course.
Just to make sure that it's not someone who's going to just put the moves on you the minute you leave port. But generally, like, you can find really safe, fun boats. Any captain worth their salt will take people with no experience because they can teach you really quickly. And it's much more about your capacity to participate as a full active crew member, your enthusiasm to learn. That's more important than whether you know anything or not. You don't have to have the experience, you just have to have the want to learn.
And obviously then you have your own language there, like
there's so many
technical terminologies,
but we always said when you are starting a new job in Australia, you have to learn the key vocabulary. Like the same if you're working as a cleaner or if you're working at construction,
or if you're breaking a world record. It's the same.
You have to learn the vocabulary, the keywords. But I think it's great. This is a good call to everyone to, like, I don't know, try a new thing. If you want it, if you feel comfortable, there's opportunities. There's jobs opportunities. We were also having a look if there's visas opportunities. Is there something around? You have to check, obviously. But it's a good path. It's a good way.
If you're a engineer.
And there's also quite a few boats that look for, like, live-in or pairs almost scenario where they've got someone, they're sailing around the world, they've got 2 small children, it's the husband and wife, and they just want an extra person on board that's normally a backpacker or something that's keen to be with them for 3 months. You help look after the kids.
You're kidding.
So there's stuff like that. that out there too. And they're all on those sort of find a crew platforms. And there are also agencies that'll help book you into those sort of roles. But yeah, it's a great amazing. Life. Like, you know.
We were talking about that before because I think, well, for us coming from Chile, we have a very good relationship. Not everyone, obviously, but a good relationship with the ocean because our coastline is massive. And it's same with Australia, obviously. But I feel like here, everyone's got a better understanding of the ocean, the winds. Everyone knows what's sort of what the swell's doing. Or not everyone, but it's more like people living on the coast. Yeah, it's more like not. They have that access to that information.
I think like 80% of Australians live on the coast.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's a desert in the centre. Not that many, like actually, apart from the farmers and stuff, there's not a huge range of communities that aren't close or close enough to a coastline. So.
But I have the feeling that the ocean here is a bit more friendly. In terms of temperature, in bit of wildness.
We're a bit further north, maybe.
If we compare with Chile, so people have more relationship with the ocean in general. Like,
the coast of Chile's got those storms from the Southern Ocean pressing up. So you get, it's like the west coast of Australia, the southwest coast of Australia gets a lot of wind, a lot of big swell.
And it's really cold.
Yeah, when I went there, I was like, oh, this is like Chile. I was like, the ocean speaks here. Like, obviously it does it here, but like there, it was like, this is like Chile, because Chile's like, and obviously it's colder, you know, we got that humble current that it's just really not
but
friendly.
Like the northern parts of Chile would be quite similar, I would imagine, to like Tasmania or even Sydney, like as far as like temperature and stuff.
But that's true. Like here, people have more relation with the ocean in general.
We have a big culture around life at sea. Yeah,
correct. And even seafood as well. And I reckon that when we come as an outsider and we migrate here from any background, everyone gets sort of like this better relationship with the ocean.
For sure.
Yeah.
And sailing becomes, or surfing becomes, or anything, swimming becomes more accessible. And we get a better relationship. And then your question, how can we get into that? I think it's great if someone is listening and wants, you know, there's so many ways to get involved, you know.
Mate, you could go on Gumtree and buy a crap old little sailing boat for $100 and like go out and just have a go.
You know, my mate
watch a few YouTube videos. Like you don't need to know much of anything to like. It's not rocket science.
My mate did that and went out on the boat in Longi. It was a very windy day. It was westerly wind.
Pick the weather, guys. Pick the weather.
That's key.
He got in the news. We was like, mate,
got rescued.
He got rescued. I'm like, mate, look at it. No, look at that tiny boat. Like, and he got in the news. He got rescued.
Oh my
so
God.
Look at the weather. You have to.
Can you tell us more, Lisa, about the campaign that you are running now in terms of the climate action now?
Yes.
And how that starts and everything about that you are doing, because for me it's amazing. I know we share a few things about like being vegan and the sustainability part. I have to say that we met because I was Lisa cleaner.
Yes. I wanted to ask you that as well.
At first Lisa was living with a few friends. They were roommates, flatmates, and then I started cleaning the house.
And then
it was a big share house in Kirkcurl. There was like we all just rented rooms in this huge share house.
And then can I ask you, Lisa, how is Flo's English from there to now?
Actually, I didn't even think about that.
Look at her now. She's doing a podcast.
Oh my God. And at that point, I haven't had any English. Like, yes, me, vegan, food, good.
Yes, sail, boat, clean, house.
Clean, house, good. Completely clean, money, pay. Okay, I was fine.
Now it's full complete sentences. I love it.
I've been growing up in that
mind. We're very proud of you, Flo. Amazing.
Well, I guess for me, like when I first did the Clipper race, that race I spoke about at the beginning, we raced around the world, and one of the sections going from Cape Town to New Zealand, we sailed across the Southern Ocean. There was 16 of us. I was helming on deck, and we'd been at sea for 20 days. So we hadn't seen land. We're not near humans. We're off the beaten path completely. And we sort of crested this huge wave in the Southern Ocean, troughed down into the next wave. And I'd seen something like out of the corner of my eye, like a flash of a different color, like that just didn't make sense. And then went up the next wave, and I saw a styrofoam box floating past, like a polystyrene box, like the the white
ones,
boxes, the foamy boxes that they put fish and stuff in.
Yes.
One of those.
What's the name?
Yeah, it's like floating past in the middle of the ocean, like so far from land, from humans. Like, what are we seeing trash out there for? And then we sailed up past New Zealand to Australia, up to China and across the North Pacific. And there were whole sections of that part of the trip where we had to have a person on the bow of the boat with a stick pushing the rubbish out of the way of the boat to sail through. Like, it was so chocked with rubbish and pollution. And it was just like a real eye-opener for me. And then there were whole sections where it was just felt like, you know how you can sense like life? Like you get a bit of a sense that there's birds, there's fish, there's like, you know that there's life around you. There were sections that just felt wrong, like dead, like just you didn't see birds, you didn't see fish, you didn't see anything, like the whole days and days in sections of the ocean. And then like the storms were just so out of season. They were always more aggressive than forecasted, really hard to predict. Like everything's just becoming, and I think we're seeing a lot more in the last 2 years, like how destabilized our weather patterns are becoming. And so for me, I remember feeling so incredibly overwhelmed by it all and just at a loss of what to do. And so I did nothing. Like I just kept burying my head in the sand and didn't take action, didn't change the way I lived my life, told myself it's just one straw, it's not going to make a difference, or it's just one plastic bag, it won't matter, like, and just ignored the world. And then I kind of had a bit of a wake-up call when I realized that, like, we just hit 8 billion people on the planet. And if I'm thinking this way, how many of those people are also thinking that way? And I was already looking at doing the Antarctica record, and I always knew I wanted to do something with sustainability with the projects, but I really felt like that would be an opportunity to kind of, I guess, inspire people to start paying attention to the small actions, because it can be so overwhelming to think that we can't matter, we don't matter, that we're just one person. But like, if you've got 1 million people taking change, then that's 1 million actions making a better difference. Like, and I think people underestimate the power of the individual, because things like supermarkets, for example, how we spend our money, we're voting every time for the future we want with every dollar we spend. If we buy the stuff wrapped in plastic, we're voting for more of that. If we buy the stuff wrapped in cardboard and sustainable and recycled and chemical free, we're voting for more of that. And so I basically like went out and I started collecting Post-it note messages from people, because I thought that a Post-it note's a really traditional way of leaving a message. I wanted it all to be really positive and not really focus on the problem so much as focus on solutions that we could take and really empower people to take those solutions. And so I asked people to fill out a Post-it note message on something they already do to help the planet. And it could be anything they wanted, from picking up rubbish off the beach when they walk their dogs, or turning the light off when they leave the room. Or for kids, I say, like, turn the tap off while you brush your teeth so you're saving water. Like, it didn't matter if it was a small action or a big action, it was just an action. And then I gathered all of those up and we turned them into a digital design. And if you Google my boat, Climate Action Now, the whole hull of the boat is wrapped in thousands and thousands of the messages from the communities. So I've been running it for 8 years now, that project. And for me, I've been growing in my own personal sustainability journey as I've been doing the Climate Action Now campaign. And it's brilliant. Like, I just had the boat on display for the second week of school holidays down at the Australian National Maritime Museum. And we had like 1,500 people through the boat in 6 days, and so many kids, like hundreds of kids coming through. And they're all reading messages on the side of the boat. They're writing a Post-it note to add to the campaign. And it's just a really fun, positive way to inspire people, to show them that it doesn't have to be an all or nothing change. You don't have to throw out everything you own that's not sustainable and replace it all with recycled, upcycled. Like, the best thing you can do is use what you have until it's finished its journey in life, and then recycle it accordingly. And then when you purchase something new, try and purchase the greener choice. But like, it's just started that way. And then for the last record around Antarctica last year, I also was able to partner with a number of different scientific groups and did microplastic sampling the whole way around Antarctica.
You were taking like plastics.
I wasn't picking plastic up as such. It's like an inbuilt flow through system. So there was a pump we put into the boat and it would suck the water up from the ocean. And microplastics is a bit different to like larger plastic items. Like a lot of you have probably heard of like the Pacific gyre, and like the 5 gyres of plastic in the ocean. So it's like that, but it's so much more widespread. So microplastics is plastics that's less than 5 millimeters in size or microscopic. And so most of what we found, every sample the whole way around Antarctica had plastic.
What?
Wow.
So the whole Southern Ocean is contaminated. Yeah.
You're kidding.
And we calculated it based on the volume of a swimming pool to how many particles of plastic in an Olympic-sized swimming pool to give people like a visual reference. So the smallest quantity we found was 9,800 particles of microplastics in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. And that was mid-Indian Ocean on my way back. The highest quantity we found was 357,000 particles of plastic in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and that was just 5 days south of Australia.
Wow.
So just off the continental shelf there. It averaged out to be around 58,000 particles of plastic per swimming pool, like the whole way around. And even like I sailed through this area mid-Pacific, you might know it, called Point Nemo. Have you heard of that before?
As in like the movie?
Yeah, well, not Nemo the movie, but maybe where Nemo came from. Point Nemo is basically, there's nicknamed the loneliest place on Earth because it's the furthest place you can get from land anywhere in the planet.
Okay.
So it's the most remote location at sea. And so I would end up...
How far are we talking?
How far?
Yeah.
So 1,500 nautical miles from the nearest piece of land, and that's a little island that's 30 miles long and no one lives on it.
Right.
Wow.
So you're in the bang smack in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, right? And you end up being closer to the astronauts in space than any person on any piece of land anywhere in the world. And we found 68,000 particles of microplastics
in there
per an Olympic-sized swimming pool there. Like the most remote section of our ocean that you can possibly get. It's where they dump the space debris and stuff from the rocket launches because it's so remote. There's a lower chance of impacting your vessels, apart from me sailing past.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's pretty alarming, to find. And like for me, it's been really like, you know, you mentioned vegan. Like I went vegan a couple of years ago, and like it's sort of one of those things. I was vegetarian for many, many years, didn't want to eat my friends, and I just love all animals. And then I was doing the climate action stuff, and I was like, well, you got to practice what you preach. Like it's, you know, and so I just went vegan. So it's been 3 years now, never missed it. Like don't have a problem with it whatsoever. But being able to like create a project from nothing and have it impact the community in such a way, but also have it impact the science community in such a way, like have a lasting change. So that was the most comprehensive data set of microplastics ever collected for the Antarctic region.
Wow,
ever.
That's amazing.
I had no idea when I started that was what it was going to be. But
well, it's amazing and yet pretty shocking.
Yeah.
But it's so
like it's good
that
you did it, but it's also like, well,
I'm aiming for the Arctic Ocean now, go around the North Pole, because then I can get a replica set of data for the Northern Hemisphere around the Arctic Circle and see what the corresponding data sets are between the Southern Ocean and the
But
is that the same as the Baltic?
Yeah, Baltic Sea, you got to go from, well, I'm aiming to do maybe UK to UK or France to France, but you got to go through the Northwest Passage and through the Northeast Passage across the top of Russia and then around Greenland.
Wow. But I think it's great that you have been using your platform because you are well known in Australia and you have good platforms. You have been
in the world as well. She said the world.
Yeah, in the world, not only in Australia, but you have been in media so many times.
Yeah.
So you are using your platforms to spread the word, to like make people have been a bit more conscious about the things that really happening and now, and we have to
it's
take
also
action.
trying to give the power back to the people.
Yeah.
Because like if I felt so lost and overwhelmed by it, then I'm sure everyone else does to some degree too, or they just ignore it because they don't think their bit matters. Whereas I'm trying to show them that every bit matters, every decision matters, like and just do it in a really fun way that that gets that across. So yeah, it's been a journey and it's still going, and many more to come.
And there's another platform that you have been exploring, and it's the writing area. You have a book.
Yes.
How was the experience of writing a book and everything?
So I was never diagnosed, but I've got all the symptoms of dyslexia. So I'm pretty dyslexic. So I can't spell to save my life. I very barely pass English, math and science through school. Like, I'm not academic at all. So to think that I wanted to write a book was a bit out of the worlds of what was normally considered Lisa standard. It took me 2 years to write, and because I guess I'm an avid reader, I just devour books. So I guess tried to write it from how I would want to read a story like that, rather than it being the academic telling of the story. It's the emotional story. It's the highs and lows. It's the heartache. It's the trials of trying to get to the start line. Like, I still tell people, and it still stands true today, that if you delete the dismasting and near dying moment out of my story and just take in everything else that I've achieved, the hardest part of all of it was getting to the start line. And it still continues to be the same for every new project. It's raising the sponsorship, getting complete strangers to believe in you, and getting to the start line. And the book journey itself was very difficult because I guess I'd never tried. I write blogs every record. I'm writing a blog every day, but that's a very different way of telling than trying to create an overarching emotional narrative with your audience. So that was quite an interesting thing. But it took me 2 years. COVID was very beneficial for me for that.
How good.
Because I lost all my other work, so I was working on the book. We published it in 2020.
Congrats.
So it's available for download on my website, so you can check it out on there and download a copy. It's quite an easy read. So even though there's some sailing technical terms in there, I do try and explain everything as the book goes along, and there's some diagrams and stuff at the beginning to help people who are non-sailors get joy from the book. So
congrats. I was trying to find an analogy of your story that's still being written, and how does that translate to us being in Australia, migrating and, sailing these emotions of speaking a second language, and missing home and stuff. And I couldn't find it.
No, but I think
I have a quote that I reckon might fit.
Give it to us.
So this is a quote I live my life by, and I think it fits with anyone who takes a leap of faith like that. And the quote is, "Just do, because the world is changed by doers." So if you sit there thinking one day, it'll never happen. But if you just commit and just start the process of making that plan, putting that plan into action, then it will happen, and you'll be able to go and change your life story, or choose your future, almost choose your own adventure.
That's so good.
And I think that fits just as well as moving to a foreign country with where you don't speak the language necessarily very well, or it's not your primary language.
There you go.
But I was thinking about the same. I think the most difficult part about every adventure or experience is to start. To I don't know, take the energy, the commit, the everything. I say okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna stop thinking maybe or overthinking.
Or get out of your own way. Stop letting the doubts overrule your futures. And I also live by the idea that attitude is everything. And so we create our own futures. We can choose to have a happy future. We can choose to stay in the same rut that we're experiencing maybe at the moment, or we can choose to have a sad future if we allow those scenarios to take place. But ultimately, the only crafter of our future is us. And we can't change what happens to us necessarily, but we can change how we respond to it how we react to it. And we can remove ourselves from a bad situation and get a better future that way, or we can, change that situation altogether, or we can just deal with it and move on. I think that's a big lesson that I learned.
Wow. I think we're getting into the final time of our show, actually.
Oh my God.
But that has been amazing conversation. We do have a what's it called?
Tradition.
Una tradición. Una tradición in nuestro show. We do an open mic. So we just give you the open mic for you to say whatever you want to say. If you have any maybe you have stand-up comedy that you want to try. Maybe you try new jokes. Or
just don't get me to sing, because I will abandon ship, and so will you.
No, but whatever you want to say, just please feel free.
Awesome. Well, they threw this one onto me. I didn't know this was coming. All right. I think the biggest gift you can give yourself is to just trust that it'll work out if you're trying. And if you don't try, nothing's going to change. And so if you really want to do something, whether it's move to Australia, whether it's sail a boat around Antarctica solo, whether it's write your first book, whatever it is, learn English, if you trust yourself to figure it out, then you will find a way to figure it out. And there is always a solution to every problem. You might not know what the solution is today, but you will be able to find it if you keep trying to find those solutions. So I think for me, I don't necessarily have a joke or a open mic, but if I can leave the audience with something like that, I think that's equally as valuable.
That's amazing. I want to print that and have it close to my bed to see that every morning.
That was loco. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Thanks for coming.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And
it's been amazing.
And for everyone that is listening and got inspired by this story and this conversation, share it to a mate, say like, I got inspired by this. It was a great episode. And share it with your amigos, your amigas.
Yes, comment something like this has been great, and follow us, follow Lisa.
Exactly.
Google Lisa. You can Google it, and you're gonna find so many cool information, their website and everything. And nothing. Thank to you. Thank you, Abraham.
And I just want to reflect on how crazy that is that you used to be you used to cleanse Lisa's house, and look how that turned out. Like
that's the things that I love the most about this country.
We have never know, but you never know who you're talking to or how that could translate into something else.
And how many years has it been since we've seen each other? Like 3-4 years, something like that. Because I moved out of the house to do the last record.
And I started working as a cleaner too. So it's been a long time.
How good is that? I should move out of the house to do that last record. I moved out of the house because I saw a rat or something like a.
Because I don't have money to pay it.
Because I didn't have money to pay it. I gotta go in the house and need to do a record.
Just gonna go sail around Antarctica quickly. I'll be back.
I'll come back. And if not, well, I'll die. Well, whatever. Well, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thanks, guys.
Ciao.